Your biology causes your death, and yet our population keeps growing. And
this narcissist atheist zombie who practically portrays himself as the very embodiment of logic itself is so illogical that every argument he has given, as proven in this series, is absolute garbage, like this false dichotomy fallacy. He says there is no creation because there is change. Why not both? Because you say so? The child never becomes an adult because puberty is just change. You're the embodiment of illogic, atheist.
There is no creation or destruction on the earth. There's change, and there are systems, there are cycles, and there's a constant input of energy powering the whole thing.
Erosion is a constant input of energy on the only ingredients for a sandcastle, which are sand and water. Yet even with infinity, not one sandcastle erodes into existence. Science says mind is needed. So your imagination about heat leading to life is shit. Your imagination doesn't matter. Science doesn't care what you imagine, atheist. You're soon dead, starving boy, yet the population keeps getting paid, so you're a winner, atheist logic. The cringe is strong with this one. Ill-Logicked is a racist. He's a macro-evolutionist, which Hitler also was. Ill-Logicked believes that subhuman blacks were a thing, because he never questioned what he's taught, unless it suited his selfish agenda, such as to question, let's say his parents said, hey, the Bible's a great book, you should read it sometime. And then if he was like, nuh-uh, because it says I have to pay if I'm selfish, I don't want to believe that, I'd rather be an atheist, I can get away with evil if I die. Anyway, so he never questioned what he's taught, is evidenced by his blindly believing stupid shit like this racist shit about imaginary subhuman blacks. Atheists are not free thinkers, they're just a gullible herd. You know why they call her Lucy? It's a reference to Lucifer. Satan is behind the lie. It's pretty obvious. Macroevolution is inherently racist because a false premise is that genes determine intelligence. But you know genes vary by race, so if the atheist creation myth were true, then some races would be smarter and superior to others. One of the reasons we justify killing animals in certain cases and eating their flesh is that they are inferior to us, especially intellectually. So, the atheist myth is very dangerous when taken seriously by the gullible. When it is taken seriously, it is invariably by the gullible. Nazis, communists, the British mass murderers of Tasmanians, and the atheist terrorists at Columbine High School, an indoctrination center, teaching kids to believe they're just animals, in which case the society, the liberal shithole secular euphemism for atheistic society, has no right to complain when they act like animals. Stupid liberal countries indoctrinating kids to be atheists. You're just an animal, then they act like animals. How dare you act like an animal, you hypocrites. Don't teach atheists shit if you don't want them to act like animals. Anyway, all these murderers shared essentially the same stupid atheist fable as a basis for their crimes. History shits on atheism. Vikings would go berserk if they saw modern Scandinavians as a modern liberal extremist feminazi Islam importing atheist cucks they are now. Europeans were cool when they weren't atheists. I didn't say good, I said cool. And of course that's a generalization. Atheists are so predictable, I can already see their claim of hypocrisy since God is genocidal. He really is, but he had real justifications. For wiping out child-sacrificing Canaanite pagans who refused to repent, so he doomed them. God is a different being than others because he's actually the creator of all life and he has the patent on your very existence. He has a copyright on every atom in your body. And so he can destroy whatever he makes. He has the right, and that's an exclusive right. And also he destroys for good reason. And when babies die, well, you'll have to just see my video on that I'll reference later. A feminazi atheist smokes while pregnant. Who do preachy atheists blame for the birth defects later? The giver of conscience. Atheists are cowards refusing to accept responsibility for their own decisions. See my video where I solve the problem of evil's existence, which anyone can do if they just take the time to think about the issue. Although it took many years, not just on this issue, but on many issues, Some I solve before others from myself, and I try helping others. Again, I'm not boasting because anyone can do what I'm doing. I'm just one of the few people who would rather do this than to live for himself selfishly. God let evil exist because love can't be forced. There's more to it than that, but that's the clincher.
Proof macro-evolution is literally impossible. The mind is free to think. Now, some atheists have an issue with their being free to think, in which case I tell them, you have disqualified yourself from debate. I debate only with thinkers. So since the mind is free, it is not a slave. It is not a slave, so it is not a slave to physics. It is not a slave to physics, so it is not physical. It is not physical, so it is metaphysical, aka magical, aka supernatural. And I easily proved it. So genes, being physical, can't determine the mind's metaphysical intelligence. So DNA evolution can't make a species into a smarter or dumber one. Atheist fanatics and other deluded macro-evolutionist racists or crypto-racists who cling to the notion that subhuman blacks were a thing would sooner believe that they are incapable of thinking, not free to think, than to concede that I'm right about that. With that argument that I gave, we can easily forgive a child who is afraid of the dark. The real tragedy of life is when men are afraid of the light. British Crown sponsor Darwin wanted all non-Europeans dead. I'm not exaggerating. All non-Europeans dead. They hid the following from us when they tried to indoctrinate us into the atheistic dogma of macro-evolution, which later on in my series I will prove is impossible. The Descent of Man, propaganda by Darwin-lists, page 201. At some future period, not very distant as measured by centuries, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace throughout the world the savage races. At the same time, the anthropomorphous apes, as Professor Schaffhausen has remarked, will no doubt be exterminated. The break will then be rendered. Did you notice he said exterminate and replace savage races? They don't teach you this when they tell you to follow his myth, which wasn't actually his, but that's another story. The break will then be rendered wider, for it will intervene between man in a more civilized state, as we may hope. Then the Caucasian and some ape as low as a baboon, instead of as at present between the Negro or Australian and the gorilla. As we may hope means he wanted the global genocide on all non-Europeans to be done. Are you Indian? Darwinian Britain wanted your race extinct, be it Dravidian, Aryan, or what have you. Free yourself from British mental colonialism. Hitler was a macro-evolutionist like atheists are, generally. Followers of the British racist Charles Darwin. In Mein Kampf, Adolf Hitler said, "If nature does not wish that weaker individuals should mate with the stronger, she wishes even less that a superior race should intermingle with an inferior one, because in such a case all her efforts throughout hundreds of thousands of years to establish an evolutionary higher stage of being may thus be rendered futile." The support which I receive from Germany is my chief ground for hoping that our views will ultimately prevail.